archery elk in the Wyoming High Country. We'd been up there for 3 days so far. We'd harvested one elk. My dad had killed it, and it was his first archery elk. Pretty excited. Nothing big, but we were excited. I wasn't there with him. Kind of wish I was, but I wasn't. We'd gone off in a different direction. And so on the 13th, we helped him pack it out. He shot it on the 12th, packed it out on the 13th. The 14th come around, and well, let's just say on the evening of the 13th, we had stayed up a little late, packed in some good time drinks, and we stayed up. I mean, we didn't get out of control or anything, but we stayed up talking for a while, talking about hunting, talking about how fun it was, talking about the good backstrap we'd just eaten off my dad's elk since we've been on 3 days of freeze-dried food. And so we slept in the next day, got up while the sun was coming over the mountains, probably about half an hour after shooting light, and got up, started cooking breakfast, just some oatmeal packets, made some coffee. I wasn't feeling the greatest, didn't really want to do anything. I was like, I'll just take it easy this morning. Maybe I'll go sit in glass. And we'd watched some elk the evening before on this one opening on the top of this ridge. And so I was like, I'm gonna go that way. Everybody else was still in camp. Like I said, we'd slept in. Everybody else wasn't ready yet, and I was ready to leave. I was like, when I feel sick, I don't really like to hunt with people. I just kind of want to move at my own pace and, just move at my own pace and not worry about trying to keep up or call or worry about someone calling for me or anything. So I took off, and I was like, I'll just go check it out. I had never been down below this opening before, so I'll go check it out and see if I can find any sign, any elk, any deer. The deer season for rifle opens the next day on the 15th. So I go down and I drop down off the steep ridge, and the sign was incredible. Super thick, not with a lot of downfall. There was some, but not a lot, but just super thick brush and smaller trees, but there's, bigger trees as well. Tough to get through. We'd never been to this spot before, so I had no idea what I was going into. But when I got down there, I realized, okay, this is a bedding area, there's no doubt. Thick like this, and there's spots where you get up and you can see 50, 60 yards through the trees. It was pretty sweet country, but I had not gotten into any elk, any deer, anything like that. Everything had been moved out of the area for the time being. So I just kind of walked around and I checked out spots. I was looking. There's a few little high mountain creeks that come right out of the mountain right down there. And about, I don't know, it was probably 8:45. I started kind of feeling, I'll go sit down and try to get some more food and water in me, try to make myself feel a little better. I didn't have any medicine with me, so it's just, maybe I was feeling low on energy, so I thought I'll force myself to eat, try to get some more energy into myself. So I made my way over to where I knew this opening was, because we'd been glassing it. Different opening from the beginning. It was off the ridge, and there's a side-hilled opening, pretty steep side-hilled opening. So I just made my way to that, went pretty much dead center of it. There was nothing around. It was 200 yards by 150 yards. It was a big opening. There was one tree almost dead center in it, big huge pine. And so I kind of went over to that. I wanted to sit in the sun though. The sun was beating right on that hill, and I thought, well, that'll make me feel pretty good. So I went over and I sat, 15 yards from that tree, sun beating on me. I took my bow and I tossed it aside, took my release off, tossed it aside, took my bino harness off, tossed it aside. I'm like, I'm just gonna sit here, eat a little bit, and listen to see if I can hear any elk bugle. And I was like, well, I might as well let out a cute couple bugles. What's it gonna hurt? So I bugled, and I wait about 20-30 seconds to bugle again. I always do it. If I don't get a response, I always wait. I always do 2 bugles. Sometimes they won't hear you, sometimes you won't hear them. So I let out 2, and I sat there, and there's nothing. So I'm like, well, I'll start eating. So I pull out my bagel. I made up some bagels, take up there with me. Made it with bacon and peanut butter, you know, high protein, just to get myself some more energy. And when I got up, when I got that out, got my water, you know, peanut butter is thick, you can't really eat it without taking a drink. So I'd be mounting down, chugging my water, not thinking really about the hike back to camp, even though it's up a steep hill. So I get comfortable. I'm just hanging out, letting the sun beat on me, eating this, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I see movement, and I look straight down. Like I said, I'm on a steep side hill, and I look straight down, and there's this elk. He had to been 90 to 100 yards away. I didn't have my rangefinder. I didn't have anything on me, and so I'm thinking, oh, I'm screwed. Like, I guess I'll just watch this one go by. My release is over here, my bow's over there, my rangefinder and binos are over here. I'm just gonna sit and watch this happen. It kind of sucks, you know. I haven't ever killed an archery elk, so I wasn't picky. There's a little 5-point coming through, and so I sit there and I'm like, this sucks. Like this absolutely sucks. I can't do anything except watch him. And yeah, I don't feel good, but you know, my adrenaline's getting going, even though I don't have anything on. Right when I think, well, he's just gonna walk away, he kind of steps behind. So he's on the bottom edge of this clearing, and he steps behind this tree. And I'm like, oh, this is my time. And I grab my bow, I grab my release, I grab my rangefinder, and I throw it all on. And I'm holding my rangefinder with a knocked arrow. I'm just sitting here tight, thinking, okay, as soon as he steps out, I'm gonna range him. So he steps out, and I range, and I can't quite pick up him because he's still behind some branches, but the branches he's behind are not like 95 yards. I'm just thinking, well, there's no way. Like, I don't even want to shoot at 60 yards if I don't have to. I will if it comes down to it. If I got a big enough animal, I will shoot at 60 yards. But I do not want to even come close to shooting 95. Like, I won't even consider it. So I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, well, I've never shot an elk, and I was getting ahead of myself, and looking back, I shouldn't have done this, but I set my sight to 60, and I go back. Okay, I say I've never shot an elk. I've hit a couple and lost them. Worst feeling in the world. But I set my sight to 60. I'm like, okay, if he gives me a perfect shot at 60, I'll take it. Right now, it doesn't look like it. He's kind of walking straight. You know, I'm looking straight down. He's broadside to me. He's just walking straight along the bottom of this opening. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's okay. You know, at least I saw an elk. It kind of got dead. So who knows if I get another chance to get this close. And I had missed an elk earlier the week. Anyway, he, out of nowhere, he just turns straight at me. I mean, as straight as this camera's looking at me, he turns straight at me. Starts walking right to me. And I'm thinking to myself, this isn't happening. There's no way. I was like, plus I'm in the wide open, so how am I going to draw back? There's absolutely no way that I'm going to be able to do this. And so he starts coming and coming and coming. I'm like, okay, this is going to happen. So I draw back. I'm set at 60. I ranged him until I got to about 70, and then I drew back, and he kept coming straight at me. I mean, I'd drawn back once, and he's coming straight at me. And so he keeps coming. I'm like, he's got to be closer than 60 now. So I let down. And like I said, he's coming right at me. I'm in the wide open. And all I can think about is, and he's looking right up at me with nothing behind me. He's got to see me. And I've got, you know, I just started buying Sitka subalpine, and I think the stuff, I mean, it sold me on it right there. Incredible. Broke my pattern up just insanely. I didn't think it'd happen, but he comes right at me. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, he's probably going to jump and take off as soon as I let down, but I don't know where to aim with my pin set at 60, so I let down. And I range and I range and I range, and he keeps coming, and he stops at about 50 yards facing me straight on. And so I'm like, holy crap, like, I will take this shot 9 times out of 10. Not front on, but I'll take it 9 times out of 10, 50-yard shot. So I set my slider to 50 yards. He starts to turn, I pull, he's moving, so I'm thinking, well, this is the best time. So I pull, and he starts walking, and I had a reed in my mouth that I'd put in just when he went behind the tree earlier as well. So I sat there, and he kind of starts to turn back away from me. I'm like, this is going to get too late. So I hit the cow call, and as soon as I hit it, I let that arrow release, and it just smacks him. And he didn't like it. He ran about 50 yards, and he stood there for, 15 minutes probably. I took a little video of him after I shot him. He stood there for 15 minutes. I ranged him a couple times thinking, well, maybe I'll try to get another arrow in him, but he was like 110 yards, 100 yards. I can't remember exactly. I'm like, I'm not going to waste an arrow shooting that far when I'm probably going to hit something that I don't want to. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like thinking, I wish I would have had a video on this, because I have no idea exactly where I hit. I'm pretty sure I hit pretty well. He was quartered away a little bit, and I think I hit just a little back, which is perfect what you would want with him quartered away. So I'm thinking, okay, like, he's got to be hurting. I throw my binos up. He's not even paying attention to me at this time. He's hurting. And so I throw my binos up. I look. I can see the arrow, and I can see it's a little far back, but you can tell it's canted in because he was quartered away. So I'm like, okay, it's a decent shot. I just want to see him fall over. He's standing there. He stood there for, like I said, 15 minutes. It might not have been that long, but it felt 15, 20 minutes. And I watched him and watched him and watched him, and I'm thinking, he's got to fall over. I can't see blood draining out of him. I can't see anything. And he turns broadside again to go around this, kind of over this little rise. And you can see his body got a lot darker. He'd already been in mud, so he was a little dark anyway, but you can see he got a little darker right below the arrow. So I'm like, okay, it looks like he's bleeding pretty good. I can't see it running out of him, but I can tell. And so I sit there, and I just have everything. I've had 2 opportunities with elk where I've hit them and just lost them. Lost the blood trail, made a bad hit, something. So I'm like, this can't happen again. Like, you lose so much faith in your bow hunting ability when you lose an animal. I'm like, this cannot happen again. Like, this has got to happen. Like, this has got to be it. This has got to be my elk. This has got to be my opportunity. And I just sat there, and I kind of heard a little rustle. It didn't sound like a big crash, but it sounded like a rustle. I was like, okay, like, he's not feeling good. I can still kind of hear something moving around. And all of a sudden I hear a coughing. I've never heard it in my life. Never heard a coughing noise from an elk in my entire life. Threw me off guard a little bit. I'm thinking, somebody down there? Too deep though. It was like single coughs, like just really deep and loud. And so I'd sit there and I'd listen, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I'm like, that's gotta be either a person down there, but if it was a person, you'd think you'd hear crashing from the elk. So I was like, that's gotta be him. And he's just, I hit him in the lungs, so he's coughing up blood and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm thinking, I'm like, okay. I taken the video, I pulled my phone up pretty quickly when he stopped and just sat there at about 100, 110 yards. So I looked, and I was like, okay, I think it was like 9:30, 9:34 or something like that. I'm like, okay, I'll wait till 10:30 before I start walking. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's a kill shot, but I don't want to chance anything. I've had 2 screw ups before. And so I sit there and I watch the clock go by. I'm like, okay, well, you can't sit there and watch the clock because then it'll fill forever. So I was like, I'll make myself eat, since that's what I was doing before. I'll make myself eat, drink some stuff. I had Mountain Ops, I don't know what it's called, the Mountain Ops energy deal in my, it's just a little packet. And I was like, I'll fill that up, give myself some energy. Because if he's down, it's going to be a lot of work. I'm by myself. I'm not too far from camp, probably only about 3/4 of a mile, but it's up steep country. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, I'll drink this. It'll kick in by the time I get down there. If he's dead, I'll eat my food, and I'll go over and search. And I was like, I can't get ahead of myself. I kept telling him, well, he's dead, but I can't get ahead of myself because I've already lost a couple. And it just seems like that was my luck at the time. So I end up sitting there. I ate a few things. My bagel wasn't doing it for me. I couldn't eat it. They were super good, but at the time it just was not doing it for me. So I got out and ate a couple granola bars. I had some trail mix I had mixed and ate that. And once that 10:30 hit, you better believe I was like, I don't know exactly, it was 10:30 or 10:34, something like that. And I was like, okay, cut off times here, throwing everything in the pack, grabbing my bow, knocking an arrow, and I'm going. And so I flew over to where I last saw him because I didn't even bother. Since I watched him sit there for however long, I was like, I'm not even going to bother looking right here. I go over there and there's blood everywhere. And I'm like, this is great. This is the best blood trail that I've had on an elk so far. This is fantastic. And I just keep thinking to myself, but don't get ahead of yourself. Don't get ahead of yourself because you never know. Maybe he's just bleeding this much, but he'll run 10 miles and you lose the blood trail. It's happened. It's happened before. And so I start following, and the blood trail is just, he's just gushing. And I get to a spot, and he's just got foam, perfect lung blood. Looked like he stood there for a second. I'm like, okay, he's toast. And I took probably two steps, looked to my left, and he's piled up. He didn't go 100 yards. He's probably dead 10 minutes after I saw him or watched him leave the area. But I did not want to chance it, and I got so excited. But then the real work began, and I had to quarter him by myself, which if you've never done that with an elk, that takes a lot of work. And I'd done it with an elk a couple times with a rifle, but I've never done it with a bow. And plus I was already feeling sick. I was wore out, and it had to take me 2 hours probably just to break the elk down completely. He's kind of wedged in between a couple trees, or up against a couple trees, and then on the downhill side, so it was kind of a pain to flip him over. I ended up getting it, and I got him all packed up. I threw a front shoulder and the head. I had it all hung in trees, cool down. It was in the shade. It was in the perfect area. And so I threw his head on, I threw the front shoulder on, and I was like, okay, I'll make trip back to camp. My dad's sitting there because he just went and glassed for deer this morning, and I'll get him to come help me. And I'm walking up to camp, and my dad pulls up his phone and he starts recording me. And well, before that happened, I started yelling at him because he's like bent over doing something. I don't know what he was doing. I think he was lighting a fire, but I started yelling at him, and he stood up and he looked. I just kind of turned to my side. I'm stoked. First archery elk, and I got it 2 days after my dad got his first archery elk. And he gets pumped, starts recording me walking into camp, taking pictures of me walking into camp. Nothing special. I was whooped. It was a 3/4 mile hike uphill, and then about a 400-yard hike on flat ground, pretty much. I was stoked, but I ended up getting back to camp, got a little more water in me, replenished. By that time, Tucker and our buddy JD had gotten back, and us four set out to retrieve the rest of it. My dad being the old man and out of shape, we I gave him the bag of back straps and tenderloins, which is probably just as heavy as a front shoulder, but gave him those. We loaded the rest up and made our pack out, and I made the pack out the first time completely wrong. On the wrong trail, everything. Second pack, perfect. But just the fact that I was able to sit there, I don't know, it was insane. It was just a great experience, and how it all ended up, me being in the wide open, you know, they always say it always happens when you're least expecting it, and that's no joke. I mean, I'm in the wide open with my release off, my bow's over here, my binos are over there, I've got nothing around me, and I'm mowing down on some food, and it all played out. And, you know, Sitka, I got sold on Sitka after that. I mean, I'm sure every camo can do that, but I don't even want to test it out, because after that, I'm sold on it, and Sitka's just incredible.